So the long-awaited third reboot of Marvel's First Family is finally out, and for the most part, I do actually think they did a really, really good job. Now, I might be alone in this opinion, but I personally absolutely loved the early 2000s iteration of the Fantastic Four, as I thought that one was really cool, really, really charming, and set in modern day. Whereas in this one, I feel like they purposefully wanted to do something radically different, and so set it in a retro-futuristic 1960s setting. Now, I get it, the 1960s is obviously when the Fantastic Four were first ever conceived, but I'm personally just not the biggest fan of the 1960s setting. But that being said, I do think it worked in terms of giving them a brand new identity, and the retro-futuristic setting did also work in Apple TV's Hello Tomorrow series, which I don't think anybody watched. But obviously they wanted this film to feel somewhat standalone in the MCU, and with that objective, I do actually think that they were really successful in achieving it. And I also really liked it how these four are viewed as celebrity heroes. Everybody is a big fan of the Fantastic Four, they can do no wrong, they are saving the day against a number of different villains, they are helping out with society, and I also really liked how the Thing is interacting with people, for example lifting that car. And so I think it was really powerful when suddenly everybody is turning on the Fantastic Four, when they are like, look, you are being really selfish, just choosing your own child at the expense of every single human and the planet. And then in response to that, I think Sue Storm was very brave, taking Franklin Richards out in the open in front of everybody. I think it really does show how powerful and also how determined she really is. I also really liked all of the family dynamics within this group. To be honest, it does take a little while to get used to it because of the fact that, like I said, it is so different, but by the end of it, you're already excited to see them once again. So on that point, let's segue to talk about all of the actors and their portrayals. So we've of course got Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, and I think it's a surprising take in terms of this character being so serious. Now I get it, he obviously takes his scientific job very seriously, and of course the planet is in jeopardy, all of Galactus' desire to take over everything, but I feel like even right from the beginning, when he is trying to find a lotion, and when Sue Storm is telling him that she is pregnant, I just feel like I would have loved a little bit more charisma, which you know that Pedro Pascal is capable of doing. I believe the relationship between Reed and Sue, but I feel like other portrayals have just been so much more dynamic. Now let's talk about Vanessa Kirby. So I think she did a really, really good job actually as Sue Storm, as she was having a lot of different hats. So for example, sister, wife, mother, and of course being one of the key protectors of the Earth. And I feel like she was able to show her range of acting abilities, and she just has so much screen presence, which was super apparent in all of the Mission Impossible appearances of her character, and it's really nice to see that continued over here, and she was so emotionally powerful in the final act of this movie. We've then got Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and he himself has said that it's a very different portrayal, and I have to say, I just feel like they diluted the Johnny Storm character so much with Joseph Quinn's performance. And so for the first half of this movie, I was just not able to get on the Joseph Quinn train, as I just felt like it was such a bad decision to go with him. But then by the end of it, I was just more accepting that, look, this is the new interpretation that they've got of Johnny Storm. And then I feel like when you have that mindset, you can kind of see why they're doing what they're doing, as they just want a much more stripped back version of Johnny Storm, but they do still have some of the characteristics that really do make this character unique. And I feel like his relationship with the Silver Surfer was able to explore this really, really well, and you can really see that he has got a heart of gold underneath. I loved Ebon Moss-Bachrach's performance as the Thing. He's obviously been the Thing for 4 years, so they didn't go down the traditional storyline that you do see in terms of him being so frustrated of his situation. But I love the fact that they were just showing he just wants to live a happy and wholesome life, and you just can't argue with that fact, as pretty much everybody also wants that too. I feel like Julia Garner was really, really good actually as Shalla-Bal, the extremely formidable herald of Galactus, and I feel like she was posing a mega threat to these four on a number of different occasions. I know they tease her backstory, but I would have loved to have explored that a little bit more, as when you see what she does in the final act of this movie, it just would have made it even more powerful and impactful. But like I said before, I am loving the interactions and relationships between her and Joseph Quinn's Johnny Storm. Ralph Ineson does a phenomenal job as well as Galactus, such a menacing and such a formidable and threatening character. I absolutely love this portrayal, not only because of his gravitas in terms of just being being such a massive mega character. But in that final act, it was just so chilling, especially when he called them little ants and is just so determined to get his hands on Franklin Richards. And even though there haven't been that many portrayals of Galactus in media so far, I feel like this one is definitely the best one, as you get to see how much of a powerful character he really is. And from his selfish perspective, he just wants to pass over the burden that he has been given onto Franklin Richards. And so on that perspective, very similarly to the Silver Surfer, I would have just loved a bit more of an exploration in terms of the backstory of Galactus, as I feel like they set it up in a really interesting way. And he's obviously been pushed through this black hole, so I'm sure in the future we're going to see him once again. So, you know, the Fantastic Four First Steps movie is actually pretty solid. When I first watched it, I left the theatre thinking that I wanted a little bit more from it, but on reflection, I actually do think that they did a really good job. And I just love the fact that we can still have somewhat self-contained MCU narrative storylines, and with that post-credit scene is going to be how they link it to the wider narrative. So for example, I cannot wait to see what is going to happen when Doctor Doom is in the mix as well. Why does he want Franklin Richards? Is this version of the character actually connected with Pedro Pascal's Reed Richards? Avengers Doomsday literally cannot come soon enough. But you know, overall, I was really impressed with this film. I think it's a nice, wholesome new addition, and I think it was a really great introduction to the MCU's version of the Fantastic Four. I just feel like this movie would have benefited maybe from another 20 to 30 minutes to really flesh out the backstory of the villains a little bit more. But that being said, I did really enjoy this movie for all of the reasons that I have explained, and so for all of those reasons, I'm going to give the Fantastic Four First Steps a solid 7 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear from you. What did you think of this film? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.